I always start with this slide to give people awareness of what we're going to be talking about. So this way you can start to get your mindset going if we're talking about something in CRM or something in security and risk. Today we're going to talk about everything. We're going to talk about governing the platform. So there's no specific piece that comes in here. It's the entire platform. And some of this is going to be opinion. Some of this is going to be the way that I talk about things. Some of this is going to be examples from customers that I've worked with to set up their platform, teams, and governance. But this basically is going to affect the platform as well as all 6 of the product portfolios. Okay. I see some people on the phone that have been through this with me. Hi, Tina. All right. So we'll jump in and this is the 6 portfolios broken out some more. And this is another context slide that I've been using all the time when we start these meetings off. So I want you to think of this today in just 2 pieces. And the 2 pieces we want to think about, let me just make sure. The 2 pieces we want to think about are going to be this part, which is all the experiences on the platform. This part, which are going to be also all the core pieces of the platform. So think of these as the platform, right? So the platform team or the product itself, which I'll talk to you about later, is the platform, right? So first you have this platform that supports all of the other products that get delivered. And in the middle here are the 6 enterprise class portfolios that we have on ServiceNow. And so if you think of it and just break it out into 2 areas, the platform and then the products on the platform, the products that run on the platform. And that's a good mindset to start with, to start thinking about arranging the team. So today what we're going to do is go in and talk about what we try to do a lot of times when we go in, we start to talk about the products. So running a product or running a product. Sorry, I gotta let people in here. Or running a product team. And that's what we try to shift people over to, is making sure that they have that mindset. So I'll talk to you about that mindset and why we try to instill that in people that are running ServiceNow. And then we'll go into why focus on the people. And I'll talk to you about a few principles and architecture that will dictate how your organization gets shaped if you allow it to. And then we'll talk about the CoEi framework from ServiceNow. And this will be the big takeaway from today. So if you want to start putting this together in your organization, the slides will let you do that. It's more of a template to go develop the CoEi, which is the Centers of Excellence in Innovation. So some of you may have seen that from ServiceNow before, but this is basically giving you background for why we try to align you like we do when we come in and engage with you about your organization. And then the last part I'll talk about is AI and where the different roles for AI are coming into the ServiceNow platform. So where they're coming into perspective, whether it's AI people coming in from the outside or AI people, the actual product teams becoming more versed in AI and deploying AI themselves. So it's a real interesting area that we're trying to figure out right now. And I'm really interested in how everybody is doing that today, or if that is happening today. So that's what we're going to go through on the agenda. And I'm going to start with a really old principle to talk about the product mindset. And I know everybody isn't shifting to this product mindset, but like I said, that's what we try to do when we come in and coach you on organizing around ServiceNow, as we try to get you along these lines. I want to go back to this law that was created in 1967, and some of the EAs probably recognize this. It's Conway's Law. And a lot of the documentation you read, a lot of the papers that you read about digital products and organizing around digital products refer to Conway's Law. Because what happens in Conway's Law is when you get products, you start to develop software products that you use to run your organization, or you implement products, what'll happen is the teams will form around the products that you build or adopt. Okay, so basically you'll buy SAP, you'll have an SAP team. You buy ServiceNow, you'll have a ServiceNow team. And a lot of the organization is largely formed around running those things. This is not a good thing, right? Because what happens is people rally around the products themselves instead of rallying around the problems they're trying to solve. So a lot of times this makes it difficult for doing things like integration because one team doesn't want to integrate with the other team because they want them to run on their technology or this technology. So there's a lot of things that happen here that are not good. And especially when you start to get these whole departments formed around technology. There's also with the geographically distributed teams where they'll have a certain technology in their geography, and that determines what they want to run. So they don't, so a lot of the integrations, it makes it a lot more difficult, and people get really centered on that technology. And a way to prevent this, if you read Conway's Law, and there's a good Wikipedia article on this if you just want the cliff notes. But what they say is to remedy this, understand it, and then architect for it. Right? The reverse Conway maneuver or the inverse Conway maneuver is a way to do that. So what that says is you structure your own teams around the value that you want to deliver before the products come in and structure them for you. And that's basically what it's saying is as an EA team, you should be focused on value, and the value is in the products that you're delivering. Whether it's an IT team and you're delivering IT asset management, right, as you know, for the organization, which ServiceNow may or may not be part of, right? That's what you want to form around. You want to form around the value that you're delivering back to the organization. And so that's what we're going to talk about a little bit more here as we go into these different areas. Now, if you want some more information, and this some of the big papers that influenced me to really get me on this product bandwagon, besides being a product manager in the past, there's a paper up here, The Shift to Digital Product. This is way back in 2020, and some of you may know Mark Bodman. He's on here pretty frequently. Mark worked on this paper with some other people. Dan Warfield has also been on these calls, and so has Michelle Supper. So there's a lot of people that work together to say, how do we move the shift to digital products? Or you might hear project to product, right, where a lot of people are shifting over. And a lot of this is what drives that. And that's more to solve that problem of people organizing around technologies instead of having, the right products that you're trying to deliver to the organization. This paper up here is a link out to another paper that I was able to contribute to, and it's done by the Open Group. And this is more around the formation of portfolios. So different type of products that you put into these four different portfolio structures. And then some are foundational products, some are customer focused products, some are employee products. So we wrote a paper in the Open Group, and then what you'll see in the Common Service Data Model is you'll see a lot of these things from the Open Group coming into the ServiceNow platform. And so this is a lot of research you can do if you want to look more into the products. And okay. And then the other part that I've gotten into a little bit is McKinsey Pods model. And the McKinsey Pods model, I'll show you a little bit about this, where we started with a product model, and then we started to get into these in larger organizations, these different teams forming around an idea. So what they say is that a lot of times these ideas come in and they get bounced around across different PMOs, right? So they get circled around, and then eventually it'll turn into a project somewhere and get implemented. And what the model what the model takes you towards is that you can rally quickly around ideas. You become an agile organization to where you can quickly get new ideas and then form teams around them and focus those teams on those ideas. Instead of it having to go through an 18-month cycle with all these people vetting the idea, it very quickly you're able to form the teams. And there's the teams, what they look like, right, is there's a product owner, there's business analysts. So these aren't full-time jobs where you bring in all these people just around this one idea, but it's you start to form a collaborative around that idea. And I'll show you in a couple examples when we get to our CoE model in ServiceNow, how you're starting to see this shape in some of the organizations that we work with. All right. Right now, when we think of the product, when we think of the ServiceNow platform, there's a couple articles out there from EY and a couple other ones that I read that say that platforms can help solve the problem of that we talked about before. So the Conway law, that platforms can be used to help offset that. I really like this definition that came out not too long ago because there's been a lot of debate about what a platform is and how you describe it. And this definition from Forrester came out and it says a platform is a product that supports the creation and or delivery of other products. And that's a good way to look at ServiceNow. So you have a platform owner, right, is basically just a product owner or a product manager, whatever you call them in your organization. If you're using the pods model, right, it's a product owner, right? But there's a specific reason, and that reason is to support the other ones. It's not to go ahead and deliver ITSM and HR and all these other, like to run those pieces, but their job is to run the platform that those tenants can reside on. And so when I had that picture up here, right, where we have, so basically the product, the ServiceNow platform owner runs a product that does all these things on the experience layer and does all of these things that the tenants can share, right? So their job is to maintain all these and then to bring as many tenants into the platform as possible, right? So they want to make it comfortable. I've heard people say before, it's like a hotel, right? Where you're renting space in your hotel and everybody wants to come there because you have all the amenities. You're able to provide all the interfaces, so I don't have to build my own interfaces. And you're able to provide all of that underlying support that I need to run an AI-driven product on the platform. Okay, I should have put that one in the same order. Right, so I like that definition a lot because it clears a lot up about the platform. Right? It's a supporting piece. The platform itself is not delivering value directly to the business, but it is a supporting piece to bring that value. All right, see if we have any. All right. I'm going to pause for a minute here and just see where everybody thinks they are in terms of, see if I can get this poll up, in terms of their ServiceNow team. So do you guys see a poll up on the screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we're good.
Yes, I see it.
So before we go into talk about the Center of Excellence model, I'll show you what, if we're brought in as an enterprise architecture team, I'll show you what we push you towards. But I want to know how you think you're aligned today. ServiceNow section. All right. right, I'll go ahead and end the poll. Thanks for everybody who participated in that. I thought we would have more on number three, like a hybrid team, because a lot of times what I do is I go in and see where the core ServiceNow platform team runs ITSM, but then if they have a CSM team, right, that's more of a different team that's running the CSM or even the HR pieces. Like sometimes I'll see that hybrid. So I expected that to be the highest category. But a lot of times where, this is a part of the problem is that number one, what I saw up there, and everybody should see the results on the screen. A lot of times we come in and they bought ServiceNow for ITSM. And then the HR team comes along and says, hey, that's pretty cool how you guys do incidents. I want to use that for HR. Can you give me that for HR? And then the ServiceNow team becomes the owner of all of the HR transactions and basically the HR application that runs on the platform. So a lot of times when we start to especially diversify outside of the IT portfolio, we try to break this up a little bit more and not be a ServiceNow centric team as much, right? So push it more into aligning to the specific business products. Still have that IT portfolio, right? Because IT is still delivering supporting value back to the organization, but you want to be able to focus that on, is it supply chain or is it HR or is it security and risk, and give them control over their own product area, right? So we want to diversify control more. It's kind of like if you have PeopleSoft and you're running HR on PeopleSoft, right? The HR team is typically running that HCM module, but then if you have the finance module, right, you don't have like one PeopleSoft team that are dictating all the features that come out in that modules. And it's the same thing with ServiceNow when you're treating it as an enterprise application versus an IT application. You want to start aligning more with the business, right? And the business functions that you're providing. So now a lot of times IT is that business function, right? And that's all you're using ServiceNow for. So a lot of times those support services are what you're focused on delivering. For some of you, we've had a lot of debates around what a technical service is, right? So that's a lot of times that IT is providing background technical services like reset your password or register an application for identity management services or support my Linux boxes, right? So those are all the technical services. And that's the bucket that a lot of people are building in. And the team isn't always ready for a shift or understanding that they're shifting into more business functions with the platform. So what we do is we have a centers of excellence model, and there's a white paper that's out there that it'll be referenced in the slides. And what we do is we come in and have discussions on this. So we have a workshop for the centers of excellence. And I'm going to give you the workshop template and teach you a little bit about it today so that hopefully you can use it after this meeting. And what we do. And it'll help you get started with this type of thinking, and it'll help you prepare yourself to have the conversations in your own organization. When we look at the centers of excellence, what we try to do is align three different tiers of people. So we want the right decisions. We want strategic decisions for the platform, right? Like, hey, we've been doing IT for 10 years now. Do we want to go to HR? That's a big strategic decision, right? To start using that HR portfolio or to start using the CRM portfolio in ServiceNow. And then you have the balanced demand. So these are the teams, these are actually like the product owners or the product managers that would run these areas. And these pieces are really focused on the value you want to deliver. So I want to provide enterprise architecture to my organization or IT service management to my organization. I want to provide, even when we get into the customer service management piece, that is now we're going and talking to your customers or your students or your constituents, right? Whoever they might be. So here you'll see the alignment to the portfolio. And then here you'll see the alignment to the product within the portfolio. And a lot of times this is what we start out with. But I've been in other organizations where they've been a ServiceNow customer for a long time and they've aligned at the portfolios instead of at the product level. What I always tell people here is most of these things ServiceNow can't deliver on their own. So I'm not telling you to rally around the ServiceNow product called IT asset management. What I'm telling you here is that if you're using ServiceNow for IT asset management, to have a product owner or a product manager that is tasked with running the roadmap for IT asset management and being able to pull all the pieces together that are needed to deliver IT asset management. So that includes your SCCM and your Jamf and your VMware, all those pieces that contribute to the IT asset management product, right? Think of this as your company product, not a ServiceNow product. And that's the mind shift you have to get into, because a lot of times there's people that'll say, hey, I'm responsible for the ServiceNow piece. And that's not good either, because there's all those other parts, right? The integrations. So there's needs to be the one person that's responsible for the overall success and delivery of an IT asset management program or an IT service management program. Now, what happens here when we start to talk about these things, there's the dichotomy of we're just delivering IT service management. And then there's other organizations that saying we're delivering IT service management as a service. So we're providing IT service management for 10 departments or 10 agencies or 10 schools, whatever the case may be. So basically they're brokering out IT service management to other areas. Now, in that case, you're not running a single product like ITSM. You're basically saying, how can I distribute this out and package it so we don't get so much customizations, right? How do I package it so that other departments can consume that? That happens a lot on CSM. So in the different modules, that distribution of the product also becomes a main focus. A lot of people start using our request catalog. So how do we make that package? How do we put it in a package so that all of a sudden this other department can start writing their own requests, right? And being able to receive their own requests back. So we started thinking about creating under our products, we create different services and different service offerings so that we can distribute them. Whether it's ITSM as a whole, we're distributing just ITSM with incident problem change requests all built in, or are we distributing them as separate processes? And a lot of people, just like I said, I see most of the time people are starting with the catalog. Like, I want to let other people use my catalog. There's a department that prints business cards and makes flyers. I want them to come in and be able to request those print services through the request interface. I've seen where we distribute to PMOs. So strategic portfolio management gets distributed a lot, and then customer service as well. So sometimes what I push people into doing here too is when we think about IT asset management, whether it's hardware, software, sometimes people are so split up. Hey, we have one person that takes care of data center, another person endpoint. Like, you could split them up underneath, right? But I usually try to focus people back on a centralized asset program so that we create some consistency across what we deliver in an organization. And now if you click on these, when you get these, when you're having discussions about them, you can click on the different pieces and it'll take you down to a role description. So if we go on strategic portfolio management, this is the product manager. And they own that whole SPM lifecycle. So from when we're deploying it for the first time to when we're end of lifing it or adding features, they own the whole thing. Okay, so each of these, and Christopher, I'll have you come off mute in a minute here. Each of these has a role description. So these are all regular product managers, but the ServiceNow platform product, this role is a little bit different. So here, when you own the platform, there's an overall roadmap for the platform, like when are new products coming in, right? So there might be a high level there on when the new products, when are we doing SecOps or when are we doing uh, integrated risk? And they make sure that all the things on the platform that that tenant needs, that integrated risk team needs, are being provided by the platform so that they can come in and do what they need to do, right? Do we need AI turned on or do we just need basic workflows in the beginning? So they're supplying those platform features to that team so that they don't have to worry about those pieces. So as you read these responsibilities, that ServiceNow platform owner is a little bit different than the product owners. All right, Christopher, did you have a question?
Yes, John, thank you. So I'm the product owner for BCM for the
Cool.
state of Illinois, and I understand the role between the platform team, the product team. Uh, and my product was one of the very first ones to come online after ITSM. So what we realized quickly is that ITSM sort of was the main character of this story, and everything was built around that. And then we came in after the fact and built our platform or our product in the platform, but we really weren't paying a lot of attention at time of build out to the CSDM and how that model needs to be applied so that our data points and our changes and our effects on the broader platform are taken into consideration and vice versa also. So how does the CSDM fit in with this map that you're showing us now? That's my question. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, that's an awesome question. So this is interesting because a lot of times we've had major discussions around that. And right now we have Linda Smith here, right, is in charge of the CMDB and CSDM. And if you click on this role, right, they're a data manager or data steward. And they're not responsible for defining all of your business services and your service offerings and your app services, right? But they run a program to provide this data back to the organization. Now, usually what happens, and I've been doing this more with people lately, usually what happens is this person, my slide went, my slide deck gave up on me. Usually what happens is this person, this data manager or data steward, the one that you, basically they're like a product owner for the common service data model data. And they work with all of the different teams because the CSDM is a platform feature. So ideally what you'll have is, wow, so they're trying to reboot my Zoom. Ideally what you'll have is that that person, that CMDB person working on the platform team to provide the CMDB and CSDM data. Now, what we've seen in some organizations is that CSDM becomes so important that we move them from the bottom line, right? The process owner line where they own the data, and we actually move them up to that product layer. So we say you're in charge of the CSDM product, and what that means is that you, sorry, my PowerPoint went to sleep on me. You are in charge of all of those, getting those new process owners on board and getting them what they need so that they can use the CSDM. So basically a partnership, right, between the platform team and the owners in IRM or SecOps. So let's see if I can get back to that slide. Does that help? Did that answer your question at all? Like I've seen them on, mostly they're at the bottom layer, but I've seen them elevated because people decide to make CSDM so important to get everybody on the same page with technology.
Not only does it answer the question, but I think that's really for any scalable, for any organization of size trying to implement ServiceNow for more than just one or two modules. I don't think there's any other way to proceed. I don't think you cannot lead with your CSDM mindset because if you're not, you're on a collision course for products to interfere with each other. And then you're having to, instead of measuring twice, cut once, now we're having to go back after the fact and trying to find a solution that works for everyone, which can sometimes lead to duplicate data being stored in multiple tables. And then what's the point of having a centralized platform if we are going to do it like that. So I don't think there's any other way to go once you've rolled on more than one or two modules, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, the model today calls for, use the ServiceNow platform team, and then they should be facilitating the CSDM integration. But a lot of times, if they're too focused on ITSM, right, everybody else is secondary. So that's why moving this person up to this level, that sometimes that works because they're actually in, and I'll show you the meetings where these people interact. But CSDM will have its own roadmap, and it will say by Q2, right? I'm committing to these executives that by Q2, IRM will have all they need to be using the CSDM model for their risks. Cool. All right. Any other questions? All right. These other roles, it's interesting. I always look at ServiceNow like in three places. Sometimes ServiceNow sits the ownership of the platform in this platform team. Sometimes they're in the data center, right? And they're basically data center driven. They're focused on hardware, software. Sometimes there's an IT service management team. So that's kind of as you kind of go up the stack. And then the third place is it's an enterprise application team. Enterprise application teams understand very well how to do this, what I'm showing you here. If you're in an IT service team that's running the platform, sometimes you have to decide can that team consume enterprise demand? Like, are they used to having enterprise demand come into their layer and be able to say, okay, now we can solve it for HR? Or is HR even willing to let that team run HR cases like onboarding, right? Would they let them do that if it's an IT team or an IT service management team? So a lot of times what we see is the platform gets elevated, brings the ServiceNow team with them, right? And they move kind of from that IT category into the enterprise category. And that changes a lot with how people look at things and how they structure their organization. Right now, what we have, if we can get aligned like this, what I try to push for is that each one of these people have a roadmap. There's not one ServiceNow roadmap. That's one of the things I try to get people off of right away. There should be a roadmap for what we're doing in integrated risk, and it's going to probably include things that aren't just ServiceNow. Like to deliver my integrated risk program, I need other things besides ServiceNow. I have all these policies in SharePoint. I need to do different things, right? So the idea here is that we meet and we decide what parts are we using ServiceNow for, right? And this is what an executive steering board can do. So if you look at the top line of people here, and we recommend very specific people. So all of your people from your business units will come here, right? Your business unit executives. Hey, HR wants to know, your CHRO wants to know, how do we use ServiceNow for HR, or how could we potentially use it? And the same with supply chain and finance, right? So they all come to this executive steering board if they have a reason to come. So this is a big opportunity to get together and determine, is this platform going to do more than it's doing today? We got this great team formed around it. They're able to deliver really well. We have AI use cases that are working really well on it. So there's a lot more interest in those business unit executives coming to these meetings. But we try to keep it small. We don't want like every single process owner in this meeting. We want an executive leading it, and the platform owner is usually present, right? Because they're representing the platform as a product. We grease the skids for you. You can bring your process in, and right away we have built-in workflow and built-in interfaces. And so these are the people that you want to bring in, which is probably the most important part. And then what you want them doing is really setting that strategy. We don't want a meeting every week. Once a quarter works really well. And you get them together once a quarter and set that strategy. This way you don't end up with a bunch of pet projects when you get to your demand board. Right? So your demand board is more of this middle row of people, right? All these people are on your demand board, and they're basically saying, hey, what do you need from the ServiceNow team? Oh, I'm doing enterprise architecture, but I'm bringing in a vendor, right? So how do we work with the ServiceNow platform team with that vendor? How do we meet? How do we organize, right? How do we satisfy that demand within our own policy for the platform? Right? So that's what that demand board does is they really say, what is it that we're doing to carry out that strategy that was determined last quarter? Because we have to go back a quarter from now and talk to that executive and tell them that, hey, we met all of the goals that we had for IT asset management last quarter, or we missed on these three goals. And a lot of the funding that you're getting for the products will be determined on how successful you were spending that last batch of money. Right? Because you're going to be asking for money like I am doing customer service management, and I have 4 departments that will start using me if I do X. Right? That's what you're saying to the executives. And then the executives say, okay, you can do X, and then you need to come back next quarter. Do I have those 4 departments now using customer service management? Right. So that's the type of accountability that you want to establish between the product team and the executive level. Hey, Mitch, go ahead.
Sure. Hey, everyone. So I just posted a question in chat, and Dennis seems to kind of agree with the concern. So this is great as far as tightening up governance between your platform and your executive team and within IT. But recently we're looking at UCSF is looking at rebranding IT governance in general. So a lot of times when you're talking about things, I feel like those are already approved or vetted at the top level. And then it comes to the ServiceNow team or comes to ITSM teams, and we're doing identity management, we're doing, risk management, we're doing whatever we're doing. So how do you balance that? Because sometimes it's going to come to us. So I'm saying collectively us, and we're going to say, oh, wait, we can't do that because enterprise architecture says it's incompatible with our system, or ServiceNow can't do what you're expecting it to do. So how do you get involved in sort of that demand and portfolio review process at the higher level so that you don't trip into things like that?
Yeah, because usually when you think about the like CSDM 5, right, it comes from that idea, the request, and then it should go through the EA piece. And that EA piece should be saying, should this team even contribute in that, right? Like, is ServiceNow the right thing? But if you don't have that central function because it's coming directly to you, right? It's not going through kind of the EA vetting process that we recommend. So that's what you're saying, right? Like a lot of stuff is landing here that we have demand for people, but it's not really supporting the strategy.
Well, in our case, we've got the IT executive governance, right? And then we have underneath that, they're going to have EA steering committee or EA group that's going to review that. And I just want to know, how do I bring sort of that ITSM ServiceNow governance piece to participate in the conversation so that EA doesn't sign off on something, hand it to ITSM ServiceNow governance and say, build it out, make it work, right?
Yeah. And I think that's what these boards are for, right? Can we do it and have representation for the product manager, from the product manager saying we can do it, but we'll need this team or we'll need this integration with that other product. A lot of that is kind of figuring out here is, where does this demand go? Does it even belong in ServiceNow?
So if you have this already handled outside of the structure, outside of our sort of control, you would ideally have the product owner, product manager sitting in these boards representing us. So when it comes down to it saying, I already approved it, it's going to work. Now go through the sort of development pipeline and okay, that's yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Ideally, the decision's not made without them.
it should
Ideally.
be good. Yep, yep.
Yeah. Because, yeah, and that's where they get into some trouble, right? And the architecture team should be collaborating with those product owners. That's a really, or, product owners, product managers, whatever you're calling them. That interaction between the EA team should be seamless. Cool. And then this team, usually everybody has these in ServiceNow where this is your scrum, your stand up, right? Where people meet, and there's going to be vendors joining this. There's going to be active teams where a bunch of developers are there and then they're gone because they're from the HR side or from, where they're doing a bunch of work. So this team is more fluid where, it changes a lot, the technical teams. And I know people are doing this in all different sorts of ways, but here the platform usually the platform team is usually going to be on there, right? The platform architects and the development leads underneath that platform team, they're all going to be here saying, what are we actually doing? Because now you're talking about putting things on the platform. And, most of the time we want a ServiceNow team leading this. I've seen a lot of times where vendors lead this for people. But over time, you want to have that internally. You want to be able to be your own platform team, and to make sure what the vendors are doing is getting documented according to our best practices. So this technical governance board is one that we usually start with, and then these other two a little more difficult to get going because there's especially if you're not like ServiceNow is not an enterprise platform, but it's an IT service platform. And then a lot of times you're talking about an IT service executive, where if it becomes an enterprise platform, usually there's somebody that in a different area that's not in IT that's running the enterprise platforms, or a different executive, right, to start thinking about, like in Mitch's case, student services. So the executive owner, I've seen that change quite a few times as they make shifts in ServiceNow with the types of demand that they're processing or the types of things they're considering the platform for. Right. Any other questions or any other comments? Anybody disagree with kind of the structure that we put forth here? I've seen mixed results, right? Like a lot of times we are coming out of that IT bucket. So we're trying to get into that area where we're saying, okay, let's align with the value more. IT service management to me is a value area, right? That's our frontline service desk for all of our technology. But sometimes it's distributed all over the place, right? So it becomes a very different thing to say, hey, Mitch, you're a product manager to deliver one IT service desk. Right? Then I'll go into, like, I was in a city not too long ago and working with them, and they have 10 different IT service desks in each of their departments. So that central IT person that's running IT service management, product manager, they're responsible for giving enough to these teams to satisfy them, but not going nuts with customization, right? So we don't need instances for every one of those. So the role changes quite a bit depending on what that strategy is set up at the top. In the last few minutes, I'm going to take you a little further out on this to say, how does this start shaping if you do follow this model? And this is a lot of times what we look at as we start distributing, right? So Mark owns customer products. And then one of the customer products, he says, okay, I have a package for social benefits, or I'll do grants because the grants is a good one. So I'm issuing grants as a package because I have 25 grant applications that are doing grant management across my whole. I do government, right? So across my whole state. And what I want to do is I want to develop a grants package that's going to give me 80% of what we need so that I could just deploy grants to all of my different departments. Right. So here, these, like if you use the McKinsey pods model, right, there'll be a group of people, not full-time people, right? Like this may not warrant it, but how do you go back and how do you create a grants package that you could push out to 10 different agencies? Right? So that each agency isn't doing the same thing over again. So you're trying to reduce the effort here and not make. Now, ServiceNow is not going to do grants management. ServiceNow is going to do 60% of grants management in terms of the process. But you still need that financial payment gateway. You still need, different approval processes, right? So as it comes down here, we want these people to only be able to do about 20% of the work specific for their grants needs. And so if you go into the McKinsey site and you look up McKinsey pods, it's really cool the way that they develop this, but there's like a little tiger team around each of these ideas. Kind of like I showed in the beginning, right? Like an idea forms and you're very quickly able to respond to that idea by spinning up a team around it and saying, hey, maybe if we're doing the first grant program, maybe we can start to look at templatizing some of that. Maybe ServiceNow is part of that solution. And so you create packages, and that could be the same here for if it's distributed to HR. I know in a lot of your organizations you have distributed HR teams. Well, we might be able to do it for one HR team, but why not create an HR service delivery package or an onboarding package that all my divisions can start using? Right, so this is an extension of that product thinking where we're not developing these products. These are not ServiceNow products, right? These are products that are specific for our organization with product managers on them. So there might be a roadmap for licensing and permitting that has a little ServiceNow chunk in it, right? But there's all these other pieces that we need too with all of our other vendors. So that gets interesting, right? On the roadmap, if I'm coming to my executive board meeting and I have, Mark is running customer products, Mark might say, hey, I got all these people that have, 25 different apps for licensing and permitting. I think I could build a package to satisfy 70% of those. So the executive might say, okay, Mark, if you can get 5 of those on by 9 months from now, I'll give you the money to build that licensing and permitting template that you think you can deploy. Right. So you kind of build a trust relationship here with the executive team and that product manager so that you basically earn the right to do different things that are helping the organization. All right. So this is when I'm working with a large organization. I took out all the names and everything, but we're starting to see this form in a lot of different places. This is very different than using ServiceNow for just IT service management and IT asset management, right? So this is coming a really long way now to helping out the business with business functions. And the same with HR. HR is kind of like a mid jump, right? Because you're still dealing with employees here, but here now I'm dealing with customers, right? So that's when you go to an enterprise app, these are the types of things you start to work a lot more with. All right, I'm going to just mention this, and maybe if anybody has comments, but we're all over the board with AI in terms of where do the AI people sit on this. I don't have any specific guidance, or I wouldn't dare to give it to you at this point. But a lot of the AI concerns we have as we go into organizations, a lot of people are looking at our AI control tower product because I had one school the other day and they had 400 different AIs that they had cataloged in their university. So the first thing they want to know, is it being used? If it is being used, what value am I getting at it? And then what risk am I incurring from this happening? Right. So a lot of times the AI control tower, and sometimes there's people in charge of that. Like I've seen some states where they say, hey, that EA is tasked with doing this, right? I at least want to have visibility because this stuff's coming in the door whether I like it or not. I at least want to have visibility into what's coming into our door. So a lot of times you'll see somebody in charge and they might not be called like an AI governance officer, but a lot of times that's the entry point that we see for AI. Now, a lot of other times what we see with AI is where do we put them? Like if you look at our org model before, I've had one customer, and you guys know I work in government, right? But I have one customer where they had somebody up here and they have a governor appointed AI committee, right? So the governor said, hey, you guys are all in AI. Anything happens with AI, you're going to be responsible, right? So they would come and they would kind of sit at this executive steering board, and anything that gets done with AI has to be treated specially. I've seen other people where, similar to what we just talked about with CMDB and CSDM, where we elevate this role up to a product level. Sometimes we'll have an AI person that might not even know ServiceNow, right? That says, okay, now I am in charge of anything, like I'm overseeing a roadmap, anything AI that goes into any of these products, I need to know about it, right? So they kind of sit on the platform team. And then sometimes we see where, hey, ITSM, you want to start using AI. the ITSM person becomes, they make the case for it, and they're kind of doing AI as a subset of what they provide in terms of the IT service management service. So there's people that are coming in for AI, but everybody has a different strategy. Whether it's, hey, this you can't do anything AI without executive top-down approval, or I need, as long as there's AI oversight, we can approve the projects that you do, or just go ahead and do it, right? And then document it and follow our policy. And the product owner here is tasked with doing all that and being responsible. So has anybody else seen that where they're starting to do AI on the ServiceNow platform and there's new people all of a sudden involved with you? Whether you're just vetting it or you're do new people come into the picture that haven't worked on ServiceNow before?
They would be.
Yeah.
There is a kind of like a delivery manager for our AI, but they've not started working with ServiceNow yet.
Got it.
But yes, yeah. So there's, as you kind of explained it on here, there's a general kind of area that they're looking at it, and it kind of, they kind of guide what we want to do. And I suppose our job in ServiceNow is to say, why don't we try ServiceNow? But I would expect they would work with us on the delivery, yes, if they wanted it. Yeah.
Thanks, Sophia. Yeah, usually what they do is that we see them coming in and saying, "Oh, we have already certified Gemini. What can you guys do with Gemini?" So a lot of times, if they don't know ServiceNow, a starting point will be some other LLM where we start the conversations.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm. And that's okay, right? That's okay. We can come at it from that angle. We're not married to everybody using only the ServiceNow LLMs. So that's how we familiarize them because they know another platform. We can now say, look, this is how that platform works with us. Anybody else have AI people getting involved with?
So, John, we have a custom built platform. It's called Versa. So we have a lot of, not, we don't have 100, but we have like two or three. We piloted King Copilot. And yeah, we're getting a lot of people outside of ServiceNow and ITSM um, asking for things like, how do we have better insight with the data that we collect within ServiceNow? Like to be able to pull in insights from, open text fields. So, using AI to kind of review that and spit out some insights and analysis. So yeah, certainly, and it's forming a community practice around ServiceNow reporting, which is being led by our basically our research and education department within IT, not even within ITSM or ServiceNow. Obviously, part of ITSM, I'm looking at built-in AI for knowledge sharing and or knowledge searching and request items. But yeah, it's interesting because we're pulling in different AI folks that are in charge of AI that I want to leverage ServiceNow data because it's an enterprise platform tool that everybody in the organization pretty much uses, right? And so, how do you use it more effectively, right? How do you understand insights other than just looking at your basic ServiceNow reporting, which tells you point in time, but it doesn't necessarily, describe what's happened seasonally, right? Or patterns of business, right? So,
Yeah,
hopefully
I've
that
seen a lot of that where, and you're the platform owner, right, Mitch?
No, I'm the service management manager. We
Okay.
have a different. We're separated, so that's why I put like in polls. Like we have ServiceNow team that's led by the developer manager, and then we collaborate with them. So I manage the ServiceNow service management team. So
Okay. Because a lot of times what I see is all of a sudden these people, the ServiceNow platform owner is tasked with being an AI expert because they're having to have conversations with those AI committees and those external AI people that are doing like proof of values. In there, somebody mentioned that we don't implement AI. We implement use cases, and then we consider, like we talked about before, it's a rally around the use case, not the technology. So, but that still requires, hey, there's this new use case coming in that they're looking at that we can now do with AI. So how do we get over to the service now, or how is this person seen as part of that group of people, right? And some of the platform owners are struggling with that. Some of them love it. They really love it, right? Because there's so much work being done on ServiceNow that it really makes sense to where you get business value from the AI implementation. All right, good conversation. The last thing I'll talk to you a little bit about is we're debating on some things. I'm working on it's sort of another governance thing, but we're kind of wondering as we get into ecosystems architecture. I've talked about this a couple times before, where it's more of a rally around the network, and then AI is helping us decide, which projects should we do or which use cases should we focus on. So the enablement of AI to organize around the right ideas at the right time with the right people is becoming really interesting. And I worked on one use case just in the paper I'm working on, like how do you organize around a Medicaid ecosystem? So we start looking at the interactions not only between your own organization, right, but all the organizations that contribute. So in this one, it might be there's part of a federal government and part of a local government, and there's policy people and knowledge people. And so if we start looking at alignment there, is there a product formation or is there something else, right? As AI starts to really pull the cover off of what we should be doing and why we should be doing it. So this is a graph of the interactions that happen. So basically transactions between all these different entities, both internally and externally. And how do you respond to those things? How do you respond to the things that are happening in, like Mitch, your case, the ecosystem of education or the ecosystem of research, right? How do you respond to those with your technology quicker? So AI is presenting some new information we haven't had before. So even the formation of other things besides just products might be coming into play pretty soon. So that's pretty far out. It's 100 miles high. It needs to come down to like 5 to be useful. But I think AI and a lot of what it's figuring out is going to help us decide where to focus our people. All right, we're a minute over. Thanks everybody for your time and contributions. I'll make sure I get this up by Monday on the community if you want to get the content and use any of it. Bye, everybody.